Left off at Harris's diversion in the last video, now briefly go over Klebold's. An interesting contrast between Klebold's parents and Harris's is that while Harris's parents tend to tell it like it is in terms of what Harris has done, Klebold's parents, his mother specifically in this case, tends to phrase things, shall we say, more delicately. For example, she claims the truck that the boys stole from had a ticket on it which led Harris and Klebold to think it was abandoned, despite neither one mentioning this fact in their accounts. She also states Klebold and his friends figured out how to download the locker combinations to see if the list was still current, when again, neither Klebold nor Harris mentions this. Can't blame her for trying, I guess. Klebold himself, by contrast, states his offenses briefly and straightforwardly. In fact, it's almost comical to see them side by side. That being said, one diversion officer noted that in their opinion, Klebold, quote, lessened the seriousness of his crime. And later, his diversion officer mentioned how she, quote, confronted Dylan on his minimizing and excuse giving when he started turning in low grades in math and phys ed. She writes, it all sounds like he feels like the victim, though he denies this. Probably the most interesting thing on Klebold's diversion though, at least to me, is an essay he brought in on one of the required classes he took. He writes, I attended the ISAE Discovery class on December 12, 1998. This was an all-day class instead of the 4 2-hour class option. I chose the all-at-once method because I understand things quickly. The class, truthfully, was not worth my time. If I wasn't me, I would be voicing a different opinion. The teacher was informative and the information was valuable, but I already knew almost all of what the teacher had to say. She talked about influences and how they affect us. Family, friends, media, TV, radio, almost everything around us is an influence. I already knew this. She pointed out that influences make us sometimes act differently. I knew that too. Our class also talked about how to get what we wanted out of life. This is by making positive, right choices, and also by persevering towards these goals. He talked about coping mechanisms. A coping mechanism is what one uses to handle/manage stress or how to deal with problems. Some of these include counting, exercising, taking a walk, reading, and many other tasks. A coping mechanism is a positive alternative to making a wrong decision. I, unfortunately for my boredom, knew these things too, and used them and have used them on a regular basis for quite some time. For the other kids in the class, however, this is a valuable tool for them to use in their lives. The class talked about values and what was valuable to each of us. Some of the topics that came up were friendship, knowledge, family, money, respect, health, happiness, love, pleasure, and others. I, as any other person, value these things too. The teacher linked these values to the crimes we committed and the way that we depleted these values by committing crime. I think this came through to most of the people in the class, and again, I already knew my values. All in all, the class was a waste of time for me, and even though it went over important skills that would be greatly beneficial to someone else hearing them for the first time, it was an 8-hour day of pointless review in cramped conditions. I feel that I shouldn't have had to take that class, but I'm just trying to get out of the diversion program, as evidenced by my reluctant attendance to this fit for an uneducated person's class. Now, the attitude here is almost unreal. How we got away with such blatant disregard for diversion and everything they stood for, I don't know. And it's not like he was necessarily wrong. The class may have been something goofy like this.
Some like it hot, and that ain't cool. When you play with fire, you play the fool.
Before you set a fire, think of this. Chances are you'll be caught and sentenced. Arson burns everyone.
But you'd think he'd try to at least act like he learned something. But hey, it worked out for him, didn't it? Got released early. You can also see this elitist attitude just pouring out of his guts. Granted, it's a very watered down compared to his journals where he refers to himself as God, but you can still see traces of it. Again, pretty funny to think he got away with this, but maybe the diversion officers were laughing as hard as I was when I first saw it and just moved on. Thing is, while Harris writes a much more expected essay about his anger management class, saying it was useful and that he learned things, he mentions to the diversion officer that he honestly felt it was a waste of time and that he'd heard most of it, which is very similar to the sentiments expressed by Klebold in his essay. Well, you know what they say about birds of a feather. Another interesting thing, Klebold was given a worksheet about legal crime and punishment as part of his diversion, and he wrote his own name in a few of the examples. In an example for harassment, he writes, "After following him for an hour, Dylan pushes Brandon into a mall fountain." To define third-degree assault, he writes, "Dylan kicks Brian in the head." He even started to write, "Dylan sets off a smoke bomb in a library" to define disorderly conduct, but he very quickly realized that hit too close to home and changed it to Billy Bob. Finally, compared to Harris, Klebold is very taciturn about any mental health questions, claiming the only thing he struggles with is school and work. I mean, at the age of 16, who wouldn't? Contrast that to Harris, who mentions basically every problem he has. This could be for a lot of reasons, obviously. Maybe Klebold was playing it safe by being conservative, while Harris thought it safer to just be honest. Maybe Harris knew diversion might cross-check with his therapist, or maybe he was legitimately hoping he'd receive some kind of help, though it seems doubtful based on his journal entries. Home movies. Harris and especially Klebold were into video production, and as a result, there's a large amount of footage of them and their friends. Well, not really that large, but, larger than average. Their most infamous videos are likely Hitman for Hire and Rampart Range, because of a little thing called hindsight infamy. There are others, though, including some that have only recently come to the surface. I'll give a brief rundown of each one, a little info about it, and a few of my observations. Hitman for Hire. Mentioned this one in part 1 of the Iceberg, but like a lot of Klebold and Harris's work, it's kind of just like YouTube before YouTube. Interestingly, the original script was written as a visual aid to a report Harris was doing, where he had to make an example of a successful business operation. His business, Hitman, the trenchcoat mafia, according to the script, who killed bullies for a living. Harris received an A for this effort. Though this report includes sentences like this, the locations in Columbine are strategically positioned, so we can launch attacks in almost any neighborhood with a few minutes' notice. We also have caches of weaponry and explosives located around the CHS area and in certain fields, all to serve you, the customer. And get a load of this. The business is basically to kill people who anger our clients. Hence, the Trenchcoat Mafia Hitman for Hire business was created. Several weapons, such as a sawed-off pump-action riot gun, an AB-10 machine pistol, homemade rocket launchers, swords, and daggers, were gathered to help our business. Now on school grounds, we can't be armed. Everyone knows that if someone is caught with a weapon, they are suspended or expelled, which would not help my business at all. Therefore, using our resourceful home computers, we acquire the full name, telephone number, and address of our target. Then we hunt the target down and relocate him or her to one of several secluded areas, like the bottom of a lake. And then get a load of this. As far as costs are concerned, we can be fairly lenient. For underclassmen, the cost is $50 a day for general protection. For upperclassmen, it is $20 a day. Now, if you wanted someone so intimidated that they would not even get out of bed in the morning, that costs about $100. Assaults and beatings can range from $200 to $500 depending on the severity. For relocation of problem targets, the price is usually between $1,000 and $10,000. It basically depends on the location and the time of the hit, as well as if there will be witnesses, or if it requires us to take out a whole group of targets. Like, what kind of joke is this? Kid writes a very detailed, concrete report about how he and his cronies are going to find and kill classmates for money, including descriptions of the exact weapons they're going to use and how they're going to go about it, and all you have to say is, cool outfit, and lose the language and it's perfect.
You're a dumbass.
In all seriousness though, this is the kind of call that's much easier to make after the fact than beforehand. Kids write crazy and sometimes violent shit all the time, and there's a fine line between being paranoid over nothing, like some of the stupid dress codes that got enforced after the massacre, banning black trench coats, for example, and identifying actual threats. the teacher who reported Klebold's violent and disturbing essay, which I'll get to in the next video, was pretty good at walking this line, in my opinion. She raised justifiable concerns without automatically dismissing the quality of his work simply because it was violent. Instead of just giving him a low grade, or asking him just to write something else, she questioned him about why he wrote the story. She also discussed the story with his parents. They didn't really follow up on it, but she did bring it to their attention. Radioactive Clothing. This one's similar to Hitman for Hire, but even goofier. They were doing this shit with limited materials, and it's obvious they wrote the script around that. Apparently a nuclear bomb fell, and now radioactive clothes are attacking the neighborhoods. A bit absurd, as the actors are aware.
Yeah. As he would be taking this job, he saw what happened to them. Clothes jumped him from all sides. Couldn't even watch.
Christ, man. They just got wasted. We didn't even have a chance to save them.
Pulp Fiction. Klebold and a friend recreate a scene from one of Klebold's favorite films. This friend is 𝕮𝖔𝖑𝖚, who shared several other mutual friends with Harrison Klebold, like Chris Morris and Nathan Dykman. Eric Jackson, who was in the back seat filming the Breakfast Run video taken a day before the massacre, is also filming here. Mock kidnapping. Harris goes serial killer on a girl from class. Her name is Brandy Tinklenberg, and Harris would later ask her out to prom. Maybe this is part of an abandoned film, I don't know. He's wearing a custom shirt that says Tier, likely in reference to the big Doom level he was working on. He was so proud of this level, he would write a letter to ID Software, asking them to check it out. Dylan in the store. Basically what it says on the tin. Klebold seems to be buying a gift for Harris, as it's Harris's birthday.
Video, I have that Smurf intro that we need. Whoa!
Morning Drive. This one is pretty infamous also, and was featured in a lot of early coverage of the massacre. Klebold is driving his friend Nate Dykman to school as they listen to the Pulp Fiction soundtrack.
Here we are, my good friend Dylan, almost halfway to school.
What's up?
Doing our normal morning ritual, waking up.
Yeah, it happens. It has to.
The video was created because Dykman's father, who lived out of state, wanted to see what Dykman's daily routine was like.
There she blows, Columbine High School.
Ready the torpedoes, Mr. Nate.
Now that last sentence you just heard is pretty infamous because the joke aged a little too well, if you get what I'm saying. CHS Highway Patrol. Harris and a friend, Eric Vake, play low on brains criminals who beat a guy up and steal his car, then get chased down by the cops. The cops are played by Mike Videgnia and Chris Walker. Mike played fantasy baseball with Klebold. He was into guns and stuff like that, but he was pretty nice to me, Videgnia said of Klebold. We'd talk and joke around. Mike was home the day of the massacre. Chris was in German class with Harris for 3.5 years and also used to play soccer with him after school. He knew Klebold as Harris's friend. Vake stated the skit was filmed to parody the show Cops. One version of the video seems to have been shot with music, one without.
Oh my gosh! Okay, we're making the stop now. We're making the stop. Okay, here we go. We're gonna flip the Yui. I hope the victim's alright. We have got to save this little kid. We have got to save this boy! We're gonna take him down. And the streets are now safe again.
Put that camera on! Ow!
I didn't do it, man.
You didn't see that happen.
Oh, who's right here? Here you go, man. My girlfriend.
There you go, buddy.
All right, Chris.
Well,
Hey, ow.
God, I've eaten too many donuts. We've taken care of it all. We got him finally, and we're taking him in, and it's good.
That's actually kind of funny. Nothing like casual police bribery, eh? Notice at one point Harris is wearing the same t-shirt as in mock kidnapping. Car wax commercial. Klebold, Harris, Vake, Chris Morris, and Michelle Hartsoe, a co-worker from Blackjack Pizza, are among the many on the set for this one, which was shot behind Blackjack Pizza itself. The idea of this skit is that no matter how much gross shit is poured on the bike,
It still retains its shine.
they pour miscellaneous junk on the bike from a list Harris wrote. And I would guess this is Harris's project, as he seems to be directing it, and generally seems to be in control.
What? The seat. Alright, let's sit back up.
Say something.
Like what?
After all this, look how it retains its shine.
After all this, look how it retains its shine.
Okay, do it again. Dylan, shut up.
Why don't you tell
You're recording.
Redo it then.
Don't get in there. Don't get in there.
Fine, we're cutting it out anyway.
We'll edit it.
At one point, Klebold seems extra pissed that he just broke a computer for no reason.
God!
This commercial features the line, "What the hell are you doing to my sister's bike?"
Dylan, you do it. Yell, what are you doing to my sister's bike?
Sledgehammer.
And then, when someone points out that it actually is his sister's bike,
It's actually my sister's bike.
Who cares?
You have to yell.
I can
Dylan can yell real good.
Yeah, trust me.
Michelle Hartsoe was Harris and Klebold's co-worker at Blackjack Pizza and was around 2 years their senior, born in 1979. She'd shown them how to take powder out of fireworks around the 4th of July in 1998, and every night for about a week they'd all put the powder in milk jugs and soda cans and light them. She stated that around October of 1998, they had made what she deemed to be an idle threat that they should blow up Columbine High School. She stated that Harris seemed to be angry at life, and Dylan was just a scary person. They would gripe about how they did not feel they were being treated fairly and were unjustly persecuted at school. She characterized both Klebold and Harris as being somewhat paranoid, and that in the last month at Blackjack Pizza, she noticed Harris was more withdrawn and less talkative. That said, the store was in financial trouble, and the new owner that came in did not want or appreciate the work environment to be a social atmosphere. He expected people to come in and do their work. Hartsoe also stated both Harris and Klebold often talked about wanting to blow up Columbine High School and kill the jocks. She said that they talked about it for about a year prior to her leaving the store, but she never took them seriously. She described Harris as a nice guy who was angry with life and often seemed paranoid. She said that he had a poor relationship with his parents because they were always grounding him. She said that he liked German techno music and was known for copying his own CDs at home. He talked about having Nazi beliefs, but she did not think that it was authentic. Hartsoe described Dylan Klebold as a difficult person who was often rude. She said that he hit her once because she had counseled him on an infraction at work. Hartsoe said that Dylan did not get along well with his father. Eric Harris and Columbine, the longest home movie at almost half an hour, features Harris hanging out with his friends in school, mainly Mike Medegnia and Eric Vake, who is filming. Like Morning Ride to Columbine, it's very casual and probably would be right alongside plenty of other day in high school videos if it weren't for the fact that it features a future mass murderer. Harris comes off pretty normal, and what happens in the video is your typical high school bullshit. For example, they talk about the other Eric's new girl.
Because Eric's girl's coming down.
Yeah.
Your new girl?
Sure.
What? We mean, sure. You know you want to tap that. You know. Well, of course. I mean, who wouldn't? People would.
And one of the guys tells what seems like an exaggerated account about how amazing his job offer is.
And he goes, and I'll give you your own company truck. I go, damn straight. The hell with Tom. I was like, my own company truck. He goes, yeah, your own company truck. I'll give you the address. You go there, do the address. Sometimes I'll keep you pretty busy, he said, but there'll be a few days where you won't have nothing to do. And I go, what do I do then? He goes, take the truck, drive around, do whatever the hell you want. And I was like, fuck yeah, man, sweet. I want my own truck. Do I get my own cards too? And then he said, if you get your own truck, dude, get your own company cell phone too. And it's one of those cool ones with the little walkie-talkie button.
but maybe it was true. Who knows? A friend mentions some guy in the cafeteria he hates, which provokes the somewhat infamous reaction from Harris.
Okay, I really hate that guy there too.
I hate you, speakers.
Thank you, I do too.
And they crack endless jokes on this girl Tiffany for whatever reason. Ha.
Oh, weird. Oh, you're so loud.
What are you doing?
We're filming. Were you smiling like at the camera?
No, why?
Please, come on. Right now you're sucking on a glue. Suck. Smile. Good. There you go. Show us how you use it.
Oh my god.
Jeez, Chris. Hi, Chowder. She brings it on herself, I swear. Bye, Tiffany. Miss ya. I love you. I'll see you in German. Just kidding.
And then they kind of tease and joke around with Harris about some girl he apparently likes, and tell him to get her to sit with them.
There's what's her name? Go sit her. Go get her over here. Just go, Eric. Go get her.
Oh yeah, she looks this way.
Eric.
Casually doesn't see us.
Go get her. Okay, there she goes, Eric. You want me to go get her for you? You always got to do that. Just yell, go. Hey! Oh, Eric's getting jacked. Eric just got jacked up the ass. You like maybe that? Not.
I don't know about that, dude.
Maybe not. I'll stay away from that. Thanks, appreciate it.
Me too. Yes.
You still got jacked.
It's dank.
You're the specialty. Specialty.
Towards the end of the video, they sit with Brandy Tinklenberg and have what has to rank among one of the more boring conversations of all time.
7-layer burrito. Shut up. She ate a 7-layer burrito. And then she fell asleep on her break. And she ate this 7-layer burrito right before her break. She woke up because her mouth was bleeding, like right here, like inside, you know?
As I said earlier, he would later ask Tinklenberg out to prom via another girl, and she turned him down. I hadn't planned on going to the prom. It was late notice, Brandy would later say. It was nothing against Eric. He was always really sweet to me. Klebold appears for a few seconds, moving like a zombie. He's wearing a 9 Inch Nails, The Downward Spiral t-shirt. These 3 videos are likely part of a much longer video shot by the seniors in drama class documenting the school's production of Frankenstein. As Brooks Brown wrote in his book, No Easy Answers, the seniors in our theater troupe decided to produce a special video for Frankenstein. Not only was it a farewell project for the drama students, it was a farewell to Mrs. Caruthers, who had been one of our favorite teachers over the past 4 years. For the first part of the tape, we did interviews with the cast and crew about their favorite memories of Mrs. Caruthers.
This is Dylan Klebold, little sound guy we used to have. What's the stupidest thing Missy has ever done?
I'd have to say that would be a combination of stupid and funny. During one of the performances, the musical, I think it was The Music Man, Zach was on lights, I was doing sound, and we had little headsets, and we got her to successfully bitch out the entire cast in the dressing rooms because we kept screwing around on the headsets. We like make little noises, and she finally got all pissed off and bitched out the entire dressing room, and that was fun.
What words did she use exactly?
I don't exactly remember. She didn't use all the cuss words, just about half of them.
Hell. Okay.
Damn, hell, shit, and you could hear from the auditorium pretty much.
That's good.
So that was pretty dumb.
Quote, we then added in footage from rehearsal, along with scenes from the movie Young Frankenstein. Dylan, Zach Heckler, and I were the 3 people who did commentary for the tape. The 3 of us sat down in the front row of the Columbine auditorium and set the camera down on the stage. Our job was to review all of the people in the Frankenstein program and offer both compliments and inside jokes that only those involved in the department would understand. Later, we would intercut this footage with scenes from Young Frankenstein and show the finished version to other people in the drama club. It was a lot of fun to make, and the camera caught a few moments of Dylan coming out of his quiet shell. When Brooks writes, we added in footage from rehearsal, he's likely referring to this video. You can see Klebold's friend, Zach Heckler, and a brief interaction with John Savage, whom Klebold would later recognize in the massacre and let live. This one guy's frolicking around, seems to be mildly annoying everyone. Savage is not amused. Klebold spends the majority of the video talking to 𝕮𝖑𝖚, his English and theater teacher. She later described him as very efficient, very respectful, and courteous. You can see her in this footage from just after the massacre. Brooks describes the Frankenstein roast. The three of us roasted each other as much as we could. Dylan, who had sat quietly through some of the early jokes, happily came out of his shell for some ribbing on me. Dylan gave special mention to the makeup crew. "Damn, good job," he said. "Brooks, you are ugly as shit, and that's hard to beat with the way you look normally." "I was uglier than I even am usually," I agreed.
Creature makeup. Damn good job. Yeah. You're ugly as shit. That's hard to beat the way it is. I look uglier than I even am usually. Sorry about that. Tough job. Sorry.
Quote, "Zach, how did this guy do on sound?" I asked, referring to Dylan. "Oh, he sucked," Zach replied. Dylan threw his hands up. "Thank you." "And everybody was crying about it because it was late," Zach added. Dylan hadn't finished preparing the sound cues by Mrs. C's original deadline. Yeah, Dylan said. "I'd like to bring forth attention to this actually. For 3 years now, I've been doing this job. Just a guess here, but I think I know what I'm doing." "Okay, shut up," I said. We all laughed. That was how the video went. We picked out names, made a few good-natured jokes, then complimented the person and moved on. We had especially kind words for Mrs. Caruthers, whom all three of us were going to miss. After the final performance that night, everyone from the show watched the video. My mom took pictures. There was Dylan, laughing and having a good time, just like everyone else. Interestingly, Zach Heckler seemed to be serious about Klebold sucking at sound. Heckler preferred Yoshi Carroll, according to Carroll himself at least, who said in a police interview Zach Heckler told him that Klebold was no good at the job, the soundboard that is, but loved it. Carroll was led to believe that Klebold considered it his soundboard. Carroll believes that Heckler told the teacher that Klebold was not very good as a soundboard man and suggested Carroll to take Klebold's place. Yoshi Carroll was Romanian born and had known Klebold since 8th grade when they shared an algebra class in Carroll Middle School, though Carroll didn't see much of Klebold in high school until senior year. Carroll was also friends with Nate Dykman, who described him as a nice guy and a, quote, real smart math wizard. Harris and Klebold were not fans of the dude. He was on their hit list, and they had nothing nice to say about him on the basement tapes. Rebel News Network interview. The Rebel News Network was, and still is, Columbine's school TV station. This particular interview with Klebold took place the same day as the van break-in, January 30th, 1998. I don't think the interviewer has ever been identified, though some have theorized it was one of Klebold's friends, or at least someone he knew. Breakfast run. Klebold and friends, Dustin Gordon and Eric Fake, drive around in Gordon's car. This footage is believed to have been shot the day before the massacre. Rampart Range. This one is, of course, famous for basically serving as Harris and Klebold's practice run for the massacre. These guys had never shot guns before, so it's safe to assume that without this target practice, they would have been even more incompetent than they already were during the massacre. The video features Mark Manus, the 22-year-old who sold Klebold his Tech 9, Manus' girlfriend, Jessica McLish, 22-year-old Phil Duran, and of course, Klebold and Harris. Not that much unusual really happens in the video. Most of it is just weird in hindsight, like Harris saying the infamous bullet shit.
Oh! That's a fucking slug!
Imagine that in someone's fucking brain.
It hurt my wrist like a son of a bitch.
I bet so.
Or Klebold pointing the gun directly into his own stomach.
Can I borrow your left glove, please?
Or Manus saying,
high school kids use guns.
Everyone's firing hands appear to be very close to the muzzles of the guns, probably because the guns are sawed off, illegal, I might add, and Harris and Klebold's hands even start bleeding at one point.
Guns.
Playing with cut-off shotguns.
Guns are bad. When you saw them off and make them illegal, bad things happen to you. Just say no to sawed-offs.
Yes.
No.
And speaking of illegal gun sale. With Klebold and even Harris remaining minors throughout most of their tenure as living human beings, getting guns was one of their bigger obstacles, as Harris often noted in his journal. Robin Anderson was the first and main gun supplier. She was a fellow Columbine student who was friends with Klebold and Harris. She was close with Klebold in particular, since they were in the same calculus class. She would call him around 3 times a week and would midnight bowl with him on Friday nights. She said she would sometimes also bowl with Harris, but she never talked to him much outside of school. Anderson asked Klebold to go to prom with her, as he'd never been to a high school dance before. Klebold was reluctant, but eventually agreed, though he later said on the basement tapes it was more because his parents were going to pay for it, and he figured he might as well do something cool before he died.
You, in fact, accompanied Dylan Klebold to the prom.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Was it a date? How close were you?
We were just good friends. He went with me as a friend, kind of as a favor to me. I really wanted to go, and I knew that we would have fun if we went together. So I actually asked him, not really as a date, just as friends. And he was happy, the whole night, pretty much, as far as I could tell. He seemed in good spirits, so...
In Jeff Cass's book Columbine, he describes the gun sale with Anderson. Eric and Dylan called her the ticket to the gun show. They were 1 year under 18 and could not purchase guns themselves, but Robin could. 18 days earlier, she had turned 18. On November 22nd, 1998, Eric and Dylan picked up Robin at about 10 a.m. and talked about wanting a shotgun. Robin did not want to submit to a background check, but Eric and Dylan had already scouted the gun show for private dealers, so Robin did not have to complete any paperwork. At the show, the trio walked over to the man Eric and Dylan had spoken with the day before, Ronald Frank Hartman, 59. He had served 20 years in the U.S. Armed Forces, and after that, worked as a civilian government employee. He had a Stevens double-barrel shotgun for sale that was manufactured around 1969. Eric and Dylan asked Hartman if he had anything shorter than the double barrel, and he brought out a tape measure to show them how far they could legally cut the barrel. Hartman asked Eric and Dylan if they had brought someone 18 years old this time. They said they had. Hartman asked Anderson her age. She said she was 18 but looked young, so Hartman asked for ID. She produced her driver's license. Hartman told her the shotgun was $245, about the same price they would pay for every gun they bought that day. Robin pulled a wallet out of her bag, brimming with Dylan's money, and counted out the cash. No receipt was given. Hartman went to hand the shotgun to Robin, but Dylan took it. "Are you going to be a gentleman and carry it for her?" Hartman asked. "Yes," Dylan replied. Anderson seemed timid and nervous, but Hartman figured it was her first gun purchase. She and Dylan both seemed clean-cut, nothing to worry about. Robin, Eric, and Dylan then searched for another private dealer. Now it was Eric's turn, and he negotiated for another shotgun. A large binder clip in Robin's purse held Eric's money, and Robin can't recall if she paid for the gun or if Eric handed over the money. The dealer did not ask for any ID. Again, there was no receipt, and again, the gun was about 30 years old. One more gun to go. One more private dealer. This time, it was a black 9mm carbine rifle, in a box with 2 magazine clips. Robin was asked for her ID, and the seller double-checked with someone at another table. Again, the money held together with a binder clip was produced. Again, Robin couldn't remember if she or Eric actually handed the money over. Again, there was no receipt. Eric and Dylan also purchased bullets, and Eric bought a folding knife. Robin said she played no part in those transactions. All told, it took about an hour. When asked if she was surprised that Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold had that much money in order to spend on guns, Robin Anderson replied that she really wasn't, because they both worked, and neither one spent money on anything, including girls, since they really did not date. She thought the guns might be for hunting or a gun collection, but Eric and Dylan never talked about hunting, and when Dylan tried to shoot a deer in its backyard with a BB gun, his mom wouldn't let him. The boys also asked Robin not to say anything about the guns. They, in turn, promised not to mention her. End quote. When asked by police if this seemed suspicious, Anderson said, "Not really. It was just due to them being underage." Quote, "As they were leaving the gun show, a thought crossed Robin's mind. Maybe they would shoot someone. You guys aren't going to do anything stupid, are you?" She asked. "No," they said. Robin says that if she had known about plans for Columbine, she would have told police. End quote. Anderson and Klebold dropped off Harris at his house, and while Anderson witnessed him putting the two guns in the trunk of his car, she didn't know where he ultimately ended up hiding them in the house. When Klebold got to his house, Anderson saw him attempt to fit the gun into his bedroom drawer, and at some point later, he told her he cut off the barrel so it could fit there. Again, Anderson was asked if she found this suspicious, and she said no, since the dealer had suggested it in the first place, and she didn't even know what it did to a gun to have the barrel sawed off. The second gun sale came via Philip Duran and Mark Manus, two Columbine graduates who were both 22 years old at the time. Quote, Duran was working with Klebold and Harris at a blackjack pizza store. He introduced them to Manus at a gun show in Denver because they wanted to buy his Tech DC-9. At the gun show, I asked Phil if they were cool, Manus says. They were computer guys like me, and ahead of me at that age. Manus found a booth with the type of gun he was selling to show the boys what it looked like. Had the sale not happened, he says, he would have placed an ad in the paper. He considered the gun a piece of junk. Klebold asked to pay $300 at the time, and the rest later. Because customers must be 18 to get into gun shows, and Klebold and Harris were high school seniors, Manus says their age didn't cross his mind. Dylan came over that night. It's the first time I really talked to him, Manus says. He was already working with Linux, an advanced computer operating system, and he was in high school. They needed to wait for their next paycheck to give me the other $200. A few weeks went by, and they gave it to Phil. Nate Dykman describes this exchange in his police interview, stating he saw Klebold give at least $100 and $20 bills to Duran behind Blackjack Pizza. Dykman suspected Klebold was buying drugs, and being a just-say-no type of guy, Dykman kept ragging Klebold about it until Klebold admitted it was a gun sale.
2-year-old Manus faces charges of selling a handgun to minors and possession of a sawed-off shotgun. Both were weapons believed used in the Columbine shootings that left 13 people plus the 2 gunmen dead. The handgun was a Tech DC-9 like this. Manus purchased it at a Denver area gun show and provided it to Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the 2 Columbine gunmen. The 2 had worked here at this blackjack pizza store. It's there a fellow employee, Philip Duran, allegedly served as the middleman to hook Harris and Klebold up with Manus. Duran faces the same charges. All 4, along with a girlfriend of Manus, came to a Douglas County makeshift firing range to test the weapons. The guns were among those used at Columbine to kill 12 students, 1 teacher, as well as the 2 gunmen who took their own lives.
Manus pleaded guilty and served 19 months before he was released in June 2001 to a halfway house. He returned to software developing for the same employer he worked for prior to the incident. Duran also pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. He was paroled after serving 3.5 years. Naturally, the public was out for Duran, and in particular, Manus's throats. Many of the victims' parents wanted to see them get more time. Tom Mauser, father of victim Daniel Mauser, who at first thought the sentencing was appropriate, had a change of mind after seeing the Rampart Range video once it was released in October of 2003. Quote, the video raised questions for Mauser about whether Manus and Duran, who went shooting 3 times with the killers, had an inkling that Klebold and Harris were unstable. Or did Manus and Duran ignore clues, rationalize them away? He says. Saying I'm sorry at sentencing isn't worth anything, Mauser says. Who doesn't say they're sorry when their ass is on the line? He's directly responsible for 13 murders, said Bruce Beck, stepfather of Lauren Townsend, one of 10 students killed in the school library on April 20th. No way was justice served. Every one of these families has all these memories of their kids or husband, but that's all we have. Manus's family gets their kid back. As for Manus himself, when I found out, I was horrified. He said, I had no idea anything was going to happen. I told my parents I never want to see a gun for the rest of my life. There is no way I can adequately explain my sorrow to the families of the victims of Columbine. It is something I will regret for the rest of my life, Manus said. After Manus was escorted away from the courtroom, the families broke into applause. Manus's attorney, Robert Ransom, said later that although Manus appeared calm, he was shaken, really shaken. But Ransom also said his client will be okay. If Mark's character is as I believe it to be, he will turn it into a positive thing in the long run. He's extremely intelligent and has developed an excellent attitude about life. Manus later described his sentencing day as probably the worst day of his life. It was 2 hours of being blamed for the deaths of all these children, everyone pushing for life sentences or death. It was solely vengeance. It wasn't ever punishment. It was vengeance for their children's deaths. I understand that anger is one of the first stages of grieving, he said. As for Anderson, she was never charged because of a legal loophole. It wasn't illegal in the state at the time to gift guns to a minor, provided they were long guns. The Ketchup tampon incident. This occasion of bullying reportedly took place in the commons/cafeteria of the school, where a bunch of seniors ganged up on then juniors Klebold and Harris and pelted them with ketchup packets and hurled insults at them. There have been several slightly differing accounts of this incident, some saying the seniors called Klebold and Harris gay, and some saying they actually hit them with ketchup-soaked tampons rather than just ketchup packets. The origin of the story seems to come from Chad Lawlin, who was friends with Klebold since Klebold's days in CHIPS, the Kids Intelligence Program, if you forgot already. He stated, I caught the tail end of one really horrible incident, and I know Dylan told his mother that it was the worst day of his life. That incident, according to Lawlin, involved seniors pelting Klebold with, quote, ketchup-covered tampons in the commons. This is echoed by Klebold's mother in A Mother's Reckoning. One day, Dylan came home, his shirt spotted with ketchup. He refused to tell me what had happened, only that he'd had the worst day of his life. I pressed, but Dylan downplayed it, and I let him. Kids have disagreements, I thought. Whatever it is, it'll blow over, and if it doesn't, I'll know. There has been reporting that the incident was more serious than I could have ever imagined. A circle of boys taunting Dylan and Eric, shoving them, spraying them with ketchup, and suggesting they were gay. Brooks Brown recalled, people surrounded them in the commons and squirted ketchup packets all over them, laughing at them, calling them f***s. Brown says, that happened while teachers watched. They couldn't fight back. They wore the ketchup all day and went home covered with it. It's possible this incident is what Klebold was referring to when he wrote in Harris's yearbook. Our revenge for January's incident will be godlike, not to mention our revenge in the commons. Interestingly, the original story from Lawlin doesn't mention Harris being present for this incident. It seems that detail first appeared in Brown's retelling of the story, and kind of snowballed from there. That's not to say he wasn't there, period, but it seems like only Lawlin actually saw this incident happen, and Harris wasn't in his original story. Hand signals. After having fired real guns and seeing how goddamn loud they are, Harris likely knew both he and Klebold would be deaf as bats by the time they fired their first shots. So in his daily planner for the month of April, he wrote some hand signals for communication in his priorities list. As you do, you know. It's just normal schoolboy stuff in America. Interestingly, he includes a signal for frag in his list of bomb signals, fragging being military slang for the deliberate killing of a fellow soldier or higher-ranked officer. Maybe it was some alternative route to suicide Harris considered, though he could easily have been referring to video game slang, where frag merely stands for kills. Have a good day tomorrow. Harris once wrote in his journal, the amount of dramatic irony and foreshadowing is fucking amazing, in reference to NBK. Well, a lot of this so-called dramatic irony and foreshadowing was engineered by himself with statements like these. Harris and senior Trevor Stark bumped into each other in the school's main hallway. Stark said it was an accident. He turned to wave to a friend and accidentally bumped into Harris, who was wearing his typical black trench coat and black boots. They got into a verbal argument about who should be watching where they were going, and Harris ended the argument by saying, "Have a good day tomorrow." Stark happened to see Harris later, this time with Klebold, walking down the sidewalk near the seniors' parking lot. Stark and Harris made eye contact, and Harris smirked at him. The day was April 19th, 1999. Klebold's college application. Despite already having other commitments for the future, Klebold still made as if he were planning to go to college like everyone else. According to Sue Klebold, he'd applied to 4 colleges and was accepted at 3 and put on a waiting list for the 4th. Klebold had a 2.74 GPA, which is about equivalent to a B- or a C+, and had a 1210 SAT score, which puts him above average, which was around 1016 at the time. In his application to the University of Arizona, Klebold notes that, quote, "During my freshman year, I performed above average, receiving grades that reflected my perseverance. However, during my sophomore and junior years, I had trouble keeping a high GPA. This was partially the result of my hanging out with the wrong crowd, not caring about my future. It took me a long time to finally realize that the decisions I was making would affect me for the rest of my life. Also, I have difficulty communicating with people, and my time management was not optimal. These are things that I am diligently working to rectify, so my grades and my people skills reflect the positive change." He also lists his reasons why he wants to go to Arizona in particular. Quote, "I have chosen to apply at the University of Arizona for various reasons. The first being that the U of A is a highly competitive school with a highly renowned computer program." He meant renowned. Freudian slip. "This is what I believe will help me further my education and my career. I also believe I would enjoy the hot, dry climate, a drastic change from the weather here. I feel that a large student body would add to diversify my learning experience of college." End quote. Klebold and his parents even went to visit the university a few weeks before the massacre, where Klebold picked out a dorm room and took photos and talked about how much he was looking forward to life in the desert. That said, he wasn't acting exactly normal. Both his parents noticed he seemed a little agitated. On their way home from Arizona, they were eating at a McDonald's when Klebold insisted some teenagers at another table were laughing at him and they had to leave. Sue Klebold writes in A Mother's Reckoning, quote, "Relax still, nobody's looking at you," I said. "Besides, if a person didn't want to be noticed, why wear a floor-length leather coat?" But Dylan grew more insistent, casting quick, paranoid glances over his shoulder at the oblivious kids. He was so uncomfortable that we bolted our burgers and hustled out of there. The teenagers didn't even look up at us as we left. The rest of the ride home was uneventful. But Klebold's mother assumed his agitation was just anxiety about prom, since it was around the same time. Interesting how that worked out. He wasn't able to completely carry on as normal. You might say he was leaking a bit, but due to the timing of everything, he still didn't really raise too many suspicions. Scott Fusilier. Scott Fusilier was a Columbine student who graduated in 1997, and he became infamous after the massacre for producing a parody of Get Smart that featured an attack on the high school that was fairly similar to Klebold and Harris's Hitman for Hire. His father, psychologist Dwayne Fusilier, was one of the lead FBI investigators on the Columbine massacre case. About his son's video, quote, "In a call to Dwayne Fusilier's home, a woman who answered the phone said, 'Scott and the boys that are with that movie don't want to talk about it.' In a later call, Dwayne Fusilier refused to comment. 'You can stop right there. Nothing. Goodbye,' he said Thursday evening when a reporter began asking about his son's connection to the video. So what was the video about? According to a description in the Denver Post, one character, the bad guy, is intent on vaporizing Columbine by shooting a beam from a satellite hovering high over Colorado. Another character, a good guy who wears a trench coat, is intent on stopping the bad guy from vaporizing the school. The third character is a fellow who mistakenly thinks the good guy stole his pen. The fourth character is a fellow who believes that he was cut off in traffic by the one who lost his pen. During the video, the trench-coated good guy fires a gun at the bad guy as the bad guy runs out of the school. During the next few minutes, the characters shoot weapons at one another at various locations away from the school, never hitting each other. They finally end up in a standoff. At that point, they decide to set aside their differences. However, they don't stop the plot to vaporize the school. The final scene shows the four walking away from the school. As they do, a beam comes out of the sky, and Columbine is vaporized. When asked about the connection between Fusiliers' son and the 1997 movie, FBI spokesman 𝕮𝖒𝖏𝖏 said, "That's a non-issue, and I'm not going to comment on what kids are making in their video productions." Asked whether the FBI would be concerned if the agent's son had been involved in making the video, 𝕮𝖏 said no. There would be no concern by the FBI. 𝕮𝖏 said the video was a spoof on a mad scientist and had no similarities to the tape that Harris and Klebold produced, and that any inquiries about it would have to be made to Jefferson County school officials. A student who helped in the production of the film, Brooks Brown, said the film looks eerie today given what occurred at Columbine a little more than 2 weeks ago. It was a parody done in humor, Brown said. Brown, an underclassman when the film was made, said he had a small hand in editing it. He said it was supposed to spoof a play called Get Smart. Dwayne Fusilier's younger son, Brian, was in the cafeteria at the time of the massacre but managed to escape after seeing one of the bombs explode. Scott Fusilier went on to college and majored in TV broadcasting and video production. Harris in the window refers to this photograph where some claim Harris can be seen behind the smoke. It's been theorized it was more likely a paramedic, since Klebold and Harris should have killed themselves by the time the photo was taken. Or it's just a complete illusion and there isn't a human figure in the photograph at all.